Man, good evening to the Thursday night podcast with the awesome Trevor and also the very sleepy Macka, who should have set his alarm a little bit louder. How are you, Trevor?
Doing all right, doing all right. How are
Good
we doing,
stuff.
all things
Look,
considered?
it wouldn't be Thursday if there were no technical issues, to be fair. So let's do something that's technically. There you go. Hey, now it looks like normal. This week, because we're going to be a little bit shorter than usual, obviously. We will talk about. Obviously, we'll talk about the game, the
Yeah.
Fulham game that happened. But I want to talk about referees today because there was a nice, interesting little story I saw about Mourinho, which was quite very Mourinho-like and
Yes.
very pointed about how things are going with refereeing. And then we look ahead to the weekend as well. But let's start with the game against Fulham. 1-0 penalty dispute, which might feed into the next part of it, of the topic. But if it wasn't for the early part of the season, Trevor, performances and results like the weekend won the 4-3 and against Fulham, we would be lauding those kind of performances, wouldn't we? With tired legs and something to fight for at the end of the season. We just kind of wish we didn't have to start. We did, really, don't we?
Yeah, and it was one of those bowling shoe ugly type of games. It was not the most attractive of football against Fulham. It was one of those things where, yeah, if it was something where we were at this stage of the season, we were battling for uh, either top four or the league title, it'd be like that's just one of those ones that you have to grind out. That's one of those games that you have to get when you're not having everybody fire on all cylinders. And yeah, the penalty and we'll get to it. It's one of those things where if it happens for you, you kind of just go, well, these things happen. But if you're a Fulham fan out there, you were just rip shit probably, and I wouldn't say you'd be wrong.
Um, in terms of the lineup, I think Nunes started. I missed the first part of the
Yeah.
game, and we talked, I think, last week about what was happening. Well, maybe it was the week before about what was happening with Nunes. Was he still suffering from the shoulder injury, or was it a confidence thing? Was it just rotation? Um, did it impact the fact that Gakpo wasn't on the field from the start? Did it impact the kind of almost new free flowing way we have been celebrating? The almost joyous future replacement of Bobby Firmino. Or did it give a hint of the things that we've been talking about? We love the Nunes chaos, almost like the Nunes whirlwind. But he does change the way we play when he's on the field, really, doesn't he?
Yeah, and going forward, I think that's something that we're just going to have to get used to. It's different styles for different personnel, and while Gakpo kind of allows for that, almost the just being able to, like you said, free flow, the tides roll in and roll out, whereas Nunez is more of a guy that you don't need to just fire in a bunch of crosses for, but you have to keep him involved with the ball. He's not going to be that guy that wants to just kind of free flow. He'll do it when asked, but it just seems he's more adept at kind of finding that space and running in behind people and getting his goals that way rather than the death by a thousand passes type of goals.
What did you think? Because it was a surprise to me when Simica started on the left. Was it that? Do you think that was just let's give the boy a chance? He hasn't really done anything wrong when he was played, or and then maybe Robertson needs a rest, or was there anything happening in Robertson's game in the previous games that Klopp had to go? Maybe we need a bit of a change that side for this game at least.
Well, in the Tottenham game, I feel a lot of times Robbo kind of got pulled out of position. That was just because that's the way that kind of game devolved. there was a lot of people just kind of trying to put bandages over bullet wounds late in that game because there's just so much happening, and that he kind of got caught up into a lot. And I don't want to say this was kind of just that leading to Simicast getting a start in midweek. I do think it was more of a just rest, because we're going to need Rob at full strength if we're going to try to win out the string and make that push for top 4 actually a thing, especially with the result today that happened. You're going to need everybody as healthy as possible. And yeah, maybe he wasn't healthy to start. So that's, if that's the case, I didn't hear really anything that put that out there, that he was injured for long term. It could have just been something where in the pregame or coming to the park, he's going, yeah, coach, I don't got it today. And then they kind of just adjust from there. We'll see in this weekend if he's back in there straight away. Okay, it kind of paints a picture for you that it was rest. But if something where Costas is back in there again, maybe we need to have a conversation about how hurt Robbo actually is.
We talked about like Curtis Jones and Harvey Elliott in the past, let's say 2 months, maybe, kind of stepping up to the plate in that central midfield, which was good to see, and something that we've kind of been crying out for. Did we kind of see maybe Curtis's Jones's limitations? Maybe that he's still not physically developed yet, and then Harvey Elliott having to come on as a sub. Are we still seeing that about those players when they play? That they're maybe that youth, the youthful energy is fantastic, but there's still a certain amount of you got to calm down a little bit. You have to. There's games where you have to play with your brain more with your legs.
Yeah, and I think that's something that has been said with consistency about both those guys this year. That Harvey, it's not necessarily that he's not strong enough to play as part of a midfield 3. He's just, I think he's like a rambunctious child that you want to just have under wraps. Like, we're going to grandma's house. You have to just calm down for half an hour. And getting Harvey to kind of be like a Hendo kind of guy where he can just get the ball and get rid of it instead of trying to make a weaving dribble is something that hopefully will come with time and maturity. And the same goes for Curtis. He's a guy that I think likes to just get forward when he gets the ball and get a ball in. But when you're in the midfield and you have guys like Gakpo and Nunez and Mo that you can get that ball to and let them do that, I don't think he likes particularly passing off that responsibility. And that's something where if he's going to be a part of the midfield 3, if we're going to keep that shape, then that's something that he's just going to have to adjust to.
Speaking of midfield 3s, we're going to be joined now by let's call him the midfield maestro. There you are, Brian. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going as Thursday nightly as it can usually go for Thursday nights for the Thursday night podcast. So I'm hoping you. Well, I know you were listening in because we have your comments there. So, what did you think of the game in terms of the we're talking just about the midfield performance there. But in terms of Nunez stepping in there, Curtis Jones, that kind of youthful invigoration there that we want in the midfield. But I think Trevor made a great point there, is that with the result happening the way it happened today, I mean, we still kind of have to look at Brighton on our tails, but we can almost look a bit more positively towards Manchester United now, can't we? Because that fourth spot becomes a little bit more realistic after today, doesn't it?
I mean, I still think that fifth is still the most realistic spot to think of right there. I mean, yeah, we can watch United slip some right there, but I mean, I still think that honestly, fifth is probably going to be the most the highest spot that we're going to reach. Now, I have faith. I'd love to see United slip, but I think that West Ham match is going to could be a possible banana skin for them. And if that happens right there, wonderful, and we're just going to take advantage of it. But I think that we've the Wolves match, and those little matches that we played earlier that we dropped points on right there, I think they're just going to come back and haunt us.
In terms of we'll talk about the referees in a little bit, but after the game, Marco, I always call him Mario Silva. I don't know why I call him Mario Silva. Marco Silva complained about referee decisions and penalties. And it's something we've talked about before, especially for Liverpool, because we went so long without getting the penalty. It was almost record breaking. Are we looking at yet another controversial game here, or are managers starting to understand that they can maybe influence things a little bit by being a little bit noisy in the press, Trevor?
Yeah, and I think it's the managers trying to do what the players do on the field when they crowd around and a manager. When they crowd a ref, or they crowd an assistant, or they go over to the fourth official and they just make a big stink about everything. They're trying to find their way to influence the proceedings, and with what wages some of these managers are on right now, they'll eat that fine if they think that the next three matches they'll get favorable calls because they kind of dragged whatever ref was in their particular match through the mud, and the PGMOL will go, well, we can't put him back on that game for this, that, and they kind of shuffle stuff around, and maybe they get somebody who's got a better record reffing their particular matches. We don't know how those shifts will go about, but they wouldn't be doing it, and they wouldn't be eating the fines in the regular area that they are if they didn't think it was going to have some sort of influence.
Hey, everybody can mic up like Jose Mourinho does now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but kind of when you look at the penalty incident, and I can't remember who said it after the game, but they were saying Núñez was already in the air, so it couldn't be a foul. Sometimes it always shocks me, especially as somebody who has refereed before, is the amount of professional players and professional coaches don't understand the laws of the game. It's themselves, despite being involved in it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Let's be honest. Núñez is not adverse to falling to the ground occasionally, let's say, in a dramatic, theatrical manner. But he really was. The fact that the foul wasn't a foul in a crunching, damaging sense doesn't really matter, does it, Brian? The Fulham defender put his leg out, and he put him, if Núñez had not been impeded, there's a good chance he would have had a nice, handy shot on goal. Are we looking at a case where you kind of need to start telling the managers, even maybe Klopp to an extent, to just shut up and get on with it, or let players play the game, or is there been enough kind of con artistry, Bruno Fernandes, that we still have to bring these things up?
I think we still have to bring them up right there, but I also think that if you were going to look at the rules of the game on there, it's intent is also a part of a offense. So if you're going to put yourself into a tackle that way, and you happen to have a player that actually jumps out of the way right there, that's still intent. So I mean, in my opinion, that's still a foul. I mean, it's a foul inside the box. Now, so yeah, I mean, I think that you still have to kind of, in a way, tell some of these managers and players to shut the fuck up, basically, and let's go on with the game. I think that we've gone to a point now where were ganging up back over there, like even back for the 90s when the Manchester United used to all gang up on all the officials, and you had Roy Keane in people's face and yelling and stuff like that. I think we're getting back to that direction again, and I think that needs to be some type of level of respect for the officials, even if they make bad calls. Let the official association take care of that.
Trevor, just the kind of we'll get onto the refs now in a second. There was rumors that Brighton may be looking to sign Milner, and it just like occurred to me as a like watching the game. Like right now, we don't know it, but like players like Milner and Henderson, they're almost like a nice comfort blanket, aren't they, to bring onto the field at the end of games to settle things down, like good old heads who know how to game the system, so to speak. And when we're in a tight game like that, to calm everything down and take us to the end. Are we going to miss James Milner more than we think right now when he's eventually gone?
Yeah, and I call those guys, it's kind of just like they're closers. They're guys that come in, they know how to get games over the line. They come in and they don't want to do anything fancy in those situations. They have no qualms about taking the ball to the corner. Yeah, as Alan, Miller from McAllister, that money will match up. And you got to, and we just talked about the other end of the coin where Jones and Elliott are just always so hyped up, and they kind of just have to be just taken down a couple gears. Whereas when those guys come in, you don't need to give them any sort of direction of what their job is for that last 20 minutes to half an hour. They know they're in there. They're not going to be taking unnecessary risks. They're not going to be doing anything that is going to be intentionally detrimental to the finality of the game. And it's something that I think that when they're gone, especially Milner, he's a guy that can show these kids so much about how to take care of yourself and how to be professional and how to see out games. So when we bring in a bunch of new names and they're being asked to do what him and Hendo are being asked to do this year, next year, they can come in and do that role and not come in and want to do 1,000 different things and screw up and give the ball away and give up a late equalizer, which is when earlier in the season and we were giving up all these late goals, that was what was happening. Nobody was all these youngsters that were being asked to come in late in the game with the 5 subs, and we'd just be like, all right, send them out there, get some run. They got the most vibrant legs that we have to kind of try to run this game out, and they don't know how to shift gears down. And I think that's what we're going to miss the most with Milner more than anything, is that guy that just he can go in neutral and still be fine.
Let's move on to, because obviously we're going to have a slightly abridged show, but let's move on to just to end that one. Alan with a nice point. Milner for McAllister. If he meets the Brighton McAllister, not Gary McAllister, I'll take that one. But I might take Gary McAllister still to this day. To be fair. So let's
the same age, right?
Yeah, they're probably. Yeah, Milner is probably the same age as McAllister at this point, maybe a year older. Yeah. The referees now, I think talking about the quality of the refereeing in England has been absolutely magnified this year. It's been under the scope quite rightly a lot of the times. There's been controversy involving us. Klopp has been getting into trouble a lot more with them. But Jose Mourinho in Italian football today saying that he wore a microphone in one game to protect himself. do we think that this is going to be a thing now that's going to spread throughout football, where managers are recording themselves, almost like those the what do you call them, the sovereign citizen type people you see on YouTube who like go up and date people and cops and then record themselves? Are we going to have like YouTube videos of Jose Mourinho prodding referees to try and get a reaction out of them? And if so, is that a measure of how far refereeing has gone in terms of, I think, how too prominent they've become and too famous almost, and also the quality drop? And although, to be fair, I don't think Italian refereeing is as bad quality-wise maybe as English refereeing is becoming, but it certainly is a propensity to be more corrupt. Brian, what do you think?
Hey, I'm all for miking them up like rugby league. I mean, I think that would be the easiest solution right there, is to have them actually go to the middle of the pitch right there and actually say their call of and interpret what their interpretation is. I mean, that would end a lot of this whole controversy. And I think the whole people have like this secrecy behind VAR, secrecy behind behind what the calls are. Even though they're dubious right there, then that will actually be out in the public where they can say, "Hey, guess what? I see this guy making this call, and it's not right there." So then it actually shows it right there, the communication. Right, this is a bad call, and then get rid of them. But I mean, on the terms of the referee, the match today, I thought it was a very well officiated match today. The Brighton and Manchester United match. I mean, it was a fair match. I mean, I had no issues at all with it. I mean, I've seen some other matches right there over the past 2 weeks that I've seen some questionable calls right there, but I thought this was a pretty solid match for the official.
Trevor, what do you think is? I mean, there's we had the thing with Tierney, the whole Klopp talking about what he said was inappropriate. There's definitely an arrogant streak about. We talked about Howard Webb's influence on the referee now that he's the head honcho of it all. Is at least in English football, is there an authority problem with referees, and is there a scope for maybe managers speaking out as one, that there's seriously something up with the bias that's clearly shown by a lot of referees and where those referees get assigned? Because I always felt it was incredibly funny. I can't remember whether it was Howard Webb or not, but like referees, if you look at who they support, it's always lower league teams. You never see a referee who's like a famous Arsenal supporter or something like that. It's always like Altrincham or Rochdale or something like that, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Almost like they're hiding their biases a little bit, but not as clever as they think they are. Is there a scope for maybe managers coming out as a unit almost and saying there's something going on here and we need to re-examine how refereeing is done in this country? Or is Howard Webb just that arrogant prick who they know is just going to say, doesn't matter, lads, I'm ex-police, this is how it's going to be?
Yeah, and something I've heard with a lot of these refs is they act as if they also have their name on the back of their shirt. And since they can't have a fun sponsor on the front, that's how they're going to be the star. And there's a lot of these, and Tierney's one of those guys. There's the fact that I know as many Premier League referees as I do makes me sad, because for any other sport, I know like 2 or 3, and I only know them because they suck. Like everybody that watches baseball knows who Angel Hernandez is because he's trash and he's awful at what he does. I went to a couple of games this year where people were like just either like getting into it for the first time, like really, and they knew like 3 referees just because the first 3 games that either their boyfriend or their husband or whatever took them to, like women who had watched about 7 minutes of soccer before this season could rattle off, like they knew who like David Cootie is. Like who knows this? He's just so inept, and there's so many guys that want to make the game about themselves And now you got the ultimate guy who wanted to make things about himself in charge of it. Nothing is going to change. And yeah, I think the whole Mourinho thing may become the norm because, yeah, we're okay. You're going to say you listened to the tapes and nothing was said. All right, that's well and good. So even if you did release them, who says you didn't edit them? And in vice versa. And yeah, if you said, like Brian said, if there's no immediate transparency and you can't explain your thing on the field, none of these guys have to do press afterwards. None of these guys have to give formal statements. The union does it for them. So there's no accountability and there's no what they get sent to the championship for a week. What the fuck? They're still working. That doesn't detract them from doing anything. It's officials on the whole, especially in this league this year, and with how much of a fucking shambles VAR has been, that some of these guys, there just needs to be like a nice douching of the Premier League referee pool, and just we'll try to start from scratch. And I don't know, maybe Howard Webb comes out of retirement and just proves that he's the main man again, and hopefully just I don't know. I'm falling off. I had to bring up Dave Goody. Now I'm just pissed off.
Brian, before Trevor's head explodes, is there?
Calm myself down.
Is there? I think that's a good point that Trevor makes in terms of, like, not knowing who the refs are, etc., etc. My belief is always we should maybe go back to semi-professional referees because they seem to almost be being way better back then. Are we seeing the apex of the fully professional referee, or is it just this particular generation or this particular leadership? And when that changes, everything else will change in the Premier League.
I'll quote Neil Barnett on the World Soccer show right there. Some of the officials now are pompous pricks, and that's about what they really are. I mean, they want to try to make a big name for themselves, and just like Trevor said right there, it's all about them. It's all about their advertising. It's all about their game right there. But yeah, I'm fine with semi-pro right there. You know what? Give that way they don't have to have some kind of ego to have to go and pull. But VAR, there needs to be a really, really examination about the effectiveness of VAR. I mean, yeah, when it's a game that has to assist it to assist the officials, we've now gone to a point where VAR is making unreasonable calls and basically breaking up the run of play for us to have to come back and cause controversy. I mean, look how many points if you look down the table right there, the VAR table right there, how many bad calls have been made and are missed. I mean, it's overwhelming. Now my head's gonna explode right there about right there, because it's where would half these clubs be at the moment right now if it were not for the poor officiating right there with VAR /officials /line judges who basically are just creating the controversy. Now, like I said earlier, I don't think we should go ahead and actually go and attack them or actually go at them and stuff like that. But there has to be some kind of method of pulling them out and say, hey, guess what? You made a horrible call. You're not going to the championship. You're not officiating for 2 weeks. And then think about it right there about next time you make a crap call.
Let's move on from the referees because my temperature rises. my adrenaline starts to explode when we talk, because I really don't like the way the refereeing goes in England. But let's look ahead to the weekend, so we can get the fantasy show lads in, because make sure if you have a fantasy team that you're watching after this. But we're playing Brentford the weekend. We've spoken a lot about our admiration for Thomas Frank and his potential to be a Klopp replacement should that ever become the case in the near future. Trevor, what do you think about the game? We're at home, So we should have that Anfield factor, but at the same time, it's Brentford, and they can cause us a lot of damage if we're not on their toes, can't they?
Yeah, and Brentford just this season, I think at this stage of the thing, they're one of the few teams that has reached this stage of the season and really has nothing to play for. They're kind of just coasting to vacation, and I think that's possibly a trap game at this stage of things, because you can look at all the teams that are battling relegation and you don't want to take them lightly because they'll just throw everything you have at you. Whereas Brentford, they're just under that threshold of Europe, but they also may think that they could sneak into that Conference League spot if they win out. And they do have the manager who would instill in them to not take this last month off. This game kind of scares me in the fact that I don't want to get into a shootout with Brentford, which may end up being the case regardless of if I want it to happen or not. But yeah. But it's not just Tony these days. It's Embuemo's probably playing the best he's played all year. That their defense has gotten a lot better, and they have as my Knicks in the playoffs. They have some guys back there that will take the Pep Guardiola special, that old tactical foul, to another level. That some of those Brentford guys will just. It almost looks like he's hitting you with a clothesline if you get behind him. And I don't want to poke that bear. I want this to be a game where everybody comes out unscathed and hopefully with a win. That would be nice. But more than anything, I don't want any long-term injuries because we tried to play pinball with them.
I thought, to be fair, that Alan was talking about drugs when he thought it was speed there. But Brian, what do you think? Looking forward to Brentford. Is it going to be
something else? Not
is it going to be a banana skin, or do we have enough about us now? Are we grinding the results out in an appropriate fashion that Brentford will be troubling, but we'll ultimately do the job?
I think we're grinding out results well. I think the one thing I'm more concerned right there about is their counter and us being complacent right there. I definitely would go through and not start Harvey at the right now for this type of match right there, just because of how toward the end he kind of faded a lot right there. This needs to be a more defensive midfielder right there, just to handle control. Of course, Curtis Jones is going to start because why not? He's on the form of his life at the moment right now. So I think that that midfield needs to be solid and be able to absorb that counter attack. I think we'll be okay.
Brian, what's our score prediction for the game?
I still say 2-1. Still say I think they're going to be close with there, but I still think we have enough to take it over the line.
Trevor, what do you say?
3-2 good guys.
I'm going to book the trend and go 3-0 good guys, which is us, if in case anybody's wondering. We'll see how that works out for us. So only one quick threshold question this week before we go for the fantasy show, for our Nice and Bridge show. If you have to set 7 alarms in the morning to get yourself up for work, should you also set 7 alarms up when you go for a 1 hour nap at 6 p.m. And don't wake up until 8 o'clock? Trevor, what do you think? Is that a yes or a no?
I have more alarms than I care to elaborate on. So yeah, all the alarms, set them all. Set them for the middle of the day. Set them for when you have to go take a shit. Just alarm up your life.
Trevor gets it. Brian, yes, 7 alarms.
I have 3 alarms right there, but I can't nap, as my wife says right there, because if I nap, I'm done for the fucking rest of the night.
Yeah, I should have guessed that before I went to sleep. But just remains to say thank you very, very much for watching us on this abridged version of the Thursday Night Podcast. The Fantasy League show is on almost immediately after this, so stay tuned. And then make sure you follow us and like us and subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Discord, etc., etc., etc. And we will see everybody next week at the nice regular time of 8 p.m. If I have to set a nuclear bomb out in my backyard to wake myself up. Trevor, nice to see you again. Brian, nice to see you again. We will see everybody next week, and have a good weekend.